Today we are going to continue our discussion related to some practical tips for linear regression, right? So we talked about earlier about feature scaling. So let us once again go through and then we'll look at few more such simple practical tips as far as implementation of regression is considered. So as we have mentioned, we are having multiple features in our feature vector, right? And it may happen sometimes that the features are in different scales or different range of values. So what we mean by that, we have seen one example in the last session regarding housing price data set, and we had 4 features describing one house. So let us consider 2 features out of those 4. So let us assume that say we are having feature 1 x1, that is size of the house, and feature 2, that is x2, number of bedrooms. So size of the house may vary in the range 0 to 2000, and the feature x2 is number of bedrooms, and this value may vary between 1 to 5. So if we look at these 2 ranges for these 2 features x1 and x2, these values are not having similar scale, right? These values are too much different than one another. And if we are having such kind of a situation, sometimes it may happen that the features, as they are not having the similar scale, there is a problem in convergence of our gradient descent. So if the features are not having similar range of values or similar scale, right, there would be a problem with respect to the quick convergence of our gradient descent. And to make sure that our algorithm, gradient descent algorithm, converges quickly, what we need to do is we need to put these features in similar scale or similar range of values. And this concept actually is known as feature scaling. So there are several ways to scale the features, right? So we have seen actually what happens if we are having varied range of values for different features. So let us assume that we are having these 2 features, okay, and we have plotted these contour plots, right? This is my cost function j of theta, and this cost function is described in with respect to 2 parameters theta 1 and theta 2. Let us assume that theta 0 is 0. So we are having these 2 parameters, okay, and the values of the respective features x1 and x2 are not in similar scale. So if this is the case, then our contour plot for cost function will look like something like this that has been shown here on this slide. So we are having the contours, those are very much skewed, those are tall and skinny. So what happens is whenever we implement gradient descent, the gradient descent in fact oscillates back and forth till it reaches to the global minimum. So what we mean by that? So if the initial value of theta 0, theta 1 is say this, then what happens is it may go to this point, okay, then it may go once again back, then it may proceed. So something like this, we have something like this kind of a pattern. So there are lots of oscillations back and forth computations of gradient descent till it reaches to the global minimum. And if we are having such kind of a pattern to reach to the global minimum, obviously the number of iterations those are required in this situation are many. So obviously we are taking lots of time for convergence. So large time is required for convergence in this case. And if we would like to avoid this, if we want to have our gradient descent converge quickly, then what we can do is we can apply this method number 1 for feature scaling. So what we are going to do here is we are going to divide the feature value by the maximum in the range. Divide the feature value by maximum in the range. Say for example, if x1 is to be scaled, so x1 is the feature and we want to scale this feature x1, right? So what this feature is the size in square feet. So whatever is the actual size in square feet for that particular example, we are going to take that value divided by the maximum in the range. So what is the maximum value in this range? Range of values of x1 is 0 to 2000. So maximum value is 2000. So we are going to divide it by 2000, right? So it is a kind of normalization. Similarly, if we are having another feature x2 that denotes the number of bedrooms, what we are going to do is whatever is the actual feature value divided by the number of bedrooms, maximum value, right? So divided by 5, maximum value in the range, so divided by 5. So this is how we are going to compute the new values for x1 and x2, or rather we are going to compute the new values for the features. Okay, and these new values of the features are being considered further for gradient descent, right? So if we apply such kind of a strategy, what will happen is if we try to plot this j of theta using this contour figure, then we are having almost these circular contours. And if we are having such kinds of contours, these are less skewed, right? These are not tall, these are having the circular kind of a nature, then obviously what will happen is if we apply gradient descent, then it will take such kinds of steps and it will converge quickly, right? And this is how such kind of feature scaling will help us, right, to expedite our gradient descent. Okay, so this is first method for feature scaling. We are going to talk about one more such method for feature scaling, and practically whenever we implement gradient descent, we need to exercise, we need to use such kinds of feature scaling techniques, right, to improve upon the performance with respect to the number of iterations those are required to execute our gradient descent. Okay, I hope you must have understood. If you have any doubts, please let me know. Fine. If we follow such kind of a method, then probably we'll be having the range of these features between 0 and 1, right? So we are making these features lie in the same range, right? And that is why this kind of method works well. Now let us talk about the second method. But prior to that, I would suggest, or I'm providing you one hint. Generally, we are approximating the range of the features such as it lies between -1 and +1, right? It is a general hint. Not necessarily we always have the same range, but generally this is just a guideline that get every feature approximately in the range of -1 to +1. But as I mentioned, it need not be exactly in the same range. It need not be exactly in the same range. But at least we should make sure that all the features are at least closer to one another. There should not be a drastic change in the range of values. Say for example, if I am having feature say x1, and if that lies in the range say 0 to 3, okay, that lies in the range 0 to 3. We are having another feature say x2, and that lies between say -1 to say 0.5. Okay, let us assume that we are having one more feature say x3, and that lies say between -100 and +100. Okay, and let us assume one more feature we have say x4, and that lies between a very small range of values, say for example minus point say 0.01 to say plus 0.001. Okay, so let us assume that these are the 4 features and these are the ranges of the features. Okay, so a general statement that we have made is we would like to put all those features in the similar scale. So if we look at these 4 features, right, we may accept this range 0 to 3 and -1 to 0.5 because they are not too much different from one another if we look at the range of values. Okay, but if we consider this x3 or x4 and if we look at the range, right, then this range differs a lot. So what we are suggesting is if we are having such kind of a values, let it be as it is. Okay, we are not saying that the range of values should lie exactly in this proposed range -1 to +1, but whatever are the ranges, those should be closer to one another. So if we look at this x1 and x2 and if these are the ranges, okay, that can be accepted. But if at the same time my x3 and x4 are having such kinds of ranges, then we need to scale these features x3 and x4 so that we can make these features closer to the earlier ones. Right? So this is just one practical hint that we should follow. Right? So let us make sure henceforth whenever we implement gradient descent and regression, let us make sure that our features are having the similar scales. Okay? Now, let us go to the next method for feature scaling, and that is called as mean normalization. Mean normalization. So what this method suggests? This method suggests that replace the original value of the feature xi with this expression xi minus mu I. So what is this mu I? This mu I is average value of xi in training set. This is average value of xi in training set. So what we mean by that? See, I'm having, say for example, feature x1, x2. Okay, and in my training set, suppose I'm having the number of examples m, say equal to 10 in my training set. So how I'm going to compute this mu I? So for x1, I'll be having mu1. So mu1 will be whatever are the 10 values of x1 in my training data set. I will compute the average of that x1. Okay, and that will be my mu1. Okay, so what I will do is x1, instead of taking this x1 as it is for every sample, what I'll do is I'll replace the value of x1 with x1 minus mu1. Similarly, I'll replace the value of x2 with x2 minus mu2. Right? So we are making sure that the features are having approximately zero mean, because we are subtracting this mean average value of that feature, right? And we are not going to apply this to x0 equal to 1, because already x0 is having the value 1. So we need not do it for that feature x0. Okay, but for rest of the features, we may replace these respective feature values with these feature value minus the average of that feature in the training set. Let us see one example. Suppose x1 is the feature, right? And that feature is actually denoting the size of the house. So what we are going to do is, whatever is now this first sample, let us assume that m equal to 1 here, and my first example is having x1 value, some x1 value, right? So what we are going to do is, whatever is that x1 value, we are going to pick that value, size of the house, minus, let us assume that this 1000 is average size of house, average size of the house. So whatever is this actual size minus this average size of the house divided by the maximum in the range. So we have seen that maximum range is 0 to 2000. So maximum value in the range for size of the house is 2000. So what we are going to do here is x1 equal to size minus 1000, that is the average mu1, okay, divided by the maximum value in the range. So this is the other method that is known as mean normalization, right? So whatever is the feature value minus mean divided by the maximum value of that feature. So this is another method for feature scaling. So similarly, we may apply the same method for x2, number of bedrooms minus 2, assuming 2 is the average bedroom, number of bedrooms in our data set, and divided by the maximum number of bedrooms, that is 5. So if we apply such kind of a strategy, we are having our x1, x2 in the range minus 0.5 to plus 0.5. So approximately the similar range we are having now for this x1 and x2. So this is another kind of feature scaling. Further, if we try to generalize this method of mean normalization, we are having here the generic formula, right? And many times in practical implementations, we are making use of this formula for feature scaling. So what this formula says, xi is replaced with this formula. So xi is whatever is the actual feature value minus mu I is the mean or average value of xi in my training set. And what is this si? Si is taken, instead of having the maximum value in the range, si is considered as the range of value, that is maximum xi minus minimum xi. Maximum xi minus minimum xi in the training set, or sometimes it can be considered as the standard deviation. But usually we consider this as the maximum xi minus minimum xi. This means that if the range of values is 0 to 2000, then obviously the max value minus mean value, that is 2000 minus 0, it becomes 2000, right? But if let us assume that the number of bedrooms range from 1 to 5, if the range is between 1 to 5, and if we go with this expression for SI, then what will happen? This value will become maximum xi, that is 5, minus minimum xi, that is 1. Right? So xi minus whatever is the average divided by this 4, max xi minus mean xi. Right? So this is a generalization of this mean normalization. And many times while practically implementing our algorithm, we are making use of this kind of a feature scaling. So there are several ways to scale the feature. So appropriately we may pick any of the values. Now there are, if we implement such kind of algorithm in Python, there are lots of libraries, functions available directly. Those help us to apply this feature scaling while implementing the machine learning algorithms, right? I'm going to explain you these kinds of functions as well in the video demo or the tutorial that I'm going to upload, okay? But we should understand the theory behind, that is why I'm explaining these methods for feature scaling. So we talked about how to scale the features. Now one more essential practical tip that I'm going to provide you, and that is related to the learning rate alpha. Okay, so we have seen that we need to update our parameters theta j with this expression, generic expression. So theta j is updated as theta j minus alpha into the derivative of cost function g of theta with respect to theta j. Right? Now, the important question that comes in mind is how to choose the value for this alpha, right? And how to make sure that the gradient descent is working correctly. So these are two important questions, those we may have. The first is how to make sure that gradient descent is working correctly, and secondly, how to choose this learning rate. So I'm going to provide you the answers now to these two questions, right? To make sure that gradient descent is working correctly. Okay? Let us first focus upon this question. So ultimately in gradient descent, what we are trying to do is we are trying to minimize our cost function g of theta. And we are going to have these optimal values of thetas for which my cost function g of theta is minimum. Okay, this is what we are doing by making use of this gradient descent. Okay, so one practical tip to understand whether our gradient descent is working correctly or not, and what that trick is, what I can do is I can plot the number of iterations versus my cost function g of theta, right? Number of iterations versus the cost function g of theta. So if I plotted number of iterations versus cost function g of theta, then I may get a plot something like this. So let us try to interpret this plot. So what we have here is, say for example, as we know, we are going to iterate in our gradient descent till we reach to the minimum. Okay, let us assume that we have performed say 100 iterations. number of iterations are there on x-axis. So let us assume that we have performed 100 iterations of my algorithm. So if I am performing 100 iterations, then whatever is the value of g of theta, that has been plotted. Similarly, I continue my algorithm, I continue my iterations, and let us assume that after 200 iterations, we are visualizing or we are finding out what is the value of my cost function. Similarly, after 300 iterations, we are trying to find out what is the cost function, value of cost function, and so on. Right? So we can have such kind of a plot. So after every 100 iterations, right, we are looking at what is the value of my cost function g of theta. And if we plot it, we may find that my plot will look like this. So what to infer out of this plot? See here what is happening. After every iteration, my cost function g of theta is decreasing. After every iteration, my cost function is decreasing, right? And somewhere here at 400 iterations onwards, I am having almost similar value of my g of theta. So my plot has flattened in this region after 400 iterations, right? So what I can infer out of that is, after 400 iteration, there is no significant decrease in the value of g of theta or in the value of my cost function. So cost function is actually giving me the error. So error now remains almost the same, right? And this is what I can interpret, that if this happens, then my algorithm has converged and I have reached to the minima, right? I have reached to the minima. So this is one way to make sure that our gradient descent is working correctly. Are you getting me? Yes,
ma'am.
any doubt? Please let me know if you have any doubts. Any doubts? Got the concept?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's proceed now. So this is one trick to understand whether our gradient descent is working correctly or not. Okay, now I may have one more. Okay, and that is called as automatic convergence test. Automatic convergence test. So what we are doing here is, no doubt we are observing the value of g of theta after every iteration. We are going to observe this value of g of theta after every iteration. Okay, and practically speaking, whenever we implement our algorithm in the form of a code or a program, right, we try to find out whether this g of theta decreases by less than some threshold, small threshold. This small threshold, let us assume that this value is very small, epsilon, and it is 10 to the power minus 3. So I am going to declare that my algorithm has converged and I am going to stop my gradient descent process. Okay, so I am going to declare convergence if my cost function value g of theta decreases by less than this amount, epsilon, less than 10 to the power minus 3 in one iteration. So no doubt I am monitoring g of theta after every iteration, and whenever I find that g of theta has decreased by less than this epsilon, that is a threshold, in one iteration, then this signifies, or this we can infer out of that, that there is no significant change or there is no significant decrease in the value of my cost function j of theta. There is no significant decrease in my value of cost function j of theta, because it is in, if I compare two values of the successive iterations, then the difference is less than this small threshold. Okay, and that is why I make sure that my gradient descent is working correctly, and this is the convergence, this is the point of convergence, and that is how we need to stop iterating through, because we have reached to our global minimum, right? So this is another test, automatic convergence test, and practically whenever we implement, we may follow this test also, automatic convergence test, right? Any doubt? If you have any doubt, please let me know. Yes? May I proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. So now let's proceed with the question how to identify now that my gradient descent is not working correctly. We have seen how to identify that gradient descent is working correctly. But how to find out that our algorithm is not working properly or not working correctly? If we plot the number of iterations against j of theta, and if we are having the plot of such nature, right? Earlier we have mentioned that if we plot number of iterations against j of theta, and if we are having a plot something like this, then it is the understanding that our gradient descent is working correctly, because in every iteration my cost function is decreasing, right? But if I am having a plot like this, so in every iteration my cost function actually is increasing. If I identify such a scenario, then definitely I can make sure, or I can understand that this gradient descent is not working correctly. And what would be the probable reason for that? That also we need to identify. So why such plot I am getting? Why my cost function is increasing instead of, ideally I want my cost function to decrease, but it is increasing. So what would be the reason behind? Anybody? What would be the reason behind? If I am getting such kind of a plot, if I am having my cost function increasing with respect to the number of iterations, why this may happen? What would be the reason? Anybody? Yes? What would be the reason?
Learning rate, ma'am.
Learning rate, correct? Learning rate. So what about learning rate?
It may be too large.
It may be too large. Yes, very true. So why we are getting such kind of a plot? Say, for example, we have seen earlier also, if I am having, say, theta, that is my parameter, and if I plot my cost function like this, so this is my j of theta, this is my cost function, okay? And if I am having such kind of a plot, a bowl-shaped function j of theta, and if I have my alpha, if I have my learning rate alpha that is too big, right? That is too big. Then what will happen is, if my initial theta is this, then it may happen that it goes here, then after that it may go here, then it may go here. So it is jumping here and there. So obviously whatever are the j theta values that I am getting, those are increasing, right, after every iteration. So if my alpha value, if my learning rate is large, then there is a possibility that I am having such kind of a plot. So my g of theta is increasing with respect to the number of iterations. So obviously what needs to be done is, we need to reduce the value of our learning rate alpha. So we need to consider smaller alpha, and once again we need to perform our gradient descent. So if my gradient descent is not working properly, I can understand that after every iteration my g of theta value is increasing, and if this is the case, then this is the indication that whatever alpha value that we have selected is too big. So use smaller value of alpha and once again implement the gradient descent, and we may get the solution. Sometimes we may observe such kind of a nature of my g of theta. So it is decreasing and once again it is increasing, decreasing and increasing. So with respect to number of iterations, I may have similar kind of behavior of my g of theta. Once again, if I am having such kind of behavior, once again what I need to do is, I need to try my gradient descent with some smaller value of learning rate alpha. Okay, so this is how we can understand that our gradient descent is not working correctly, and we may change our alpha value, we may reduce our alpha value, and once again we may iterate through and we may reach to our global minima. Okay, so these are few of the practical tips while implementing gradient descent, but please understand that for sufficiently small alpha, our g of theta should decrease on every iteration, and that is the indication that our gradient descent is working correctly. But if our alpha is too small, then obviously gradient descent would be slower. So it will take much more time to reach to my global minima, right? So if alpha is too small, gradient descent can be slow.
Ma'am,
Yes.
much more time or much more iterations means.
See, obviously these two are related, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
if I'm having many number of iterations, obviously the time required is more.
Yes, but if we take alpha too small and iterations are also less.
Then that is okay. It depends. See, once again, whatever is my data, not necessarily for all kinds of applications we need to make use of the same value of alpha, right? So we need to experiment. So whatever is the and some different data set, I may require, say for example, 300 iterations. It may happen. Or even I may require 30,000 iterations. It is also possible. Right? So depending on whatever is the problem statement, and whatever is the data set that we have, the number of features we have, right? I need to, or I will require the number of iterations. Those may vary, right? But what we need to do is, while implementing the thing, we need to observe for some time that whether my g of theta is decreasing. If g of theta is decreasing, but if it is taking too many iterations, then what we can do is we can slightly increase the value of alpha. No doubt it will converge, my algorithm will converge, but it may converge after say 30 millions of iterations. It may happen. So if it is taking too many iterations, but if I observe that after every iteration my g of theta is decreasing, then what we can experiment is we can slightly increase the value of alpha, and once again we may implement. So in that case also, if we observe that my g of theta is decreasing, then it is okay. My alpha is a bit larger value, but now it will take number of iterations, those are less because I have increased my value of alpha, right? So this is how we need to adjust actually the value of this learning rate alpha. So let us summarize the things. If alpha is too small, as I mentioned, we are having slow convergence. If alpha is too large, my g of theta may not decrease on every iteration, and it may happen sometime that our algorithm may not converge, right? So we need to pick the value of alpha very carefully. And here is one practical tip for selecting the value of our learning rate alpha. So we may pick the alpha value that is 0.001 or 0.01, 0.11 and so on. So I may begin with this value of say 0.001. Okay, and if I find that g of theta is decreasing, right, but the number of iterations those I am taking are too much, then what I can do is I can slightly increase this value. So usually what practically we do is we may think of it as not a hard and fast rule, right? But with experience I'm actually making those statements, right? So what we can do is we may just increase this value, or we just multiply the earlier rate, learning rate by 3, right? So we may come up with say 0.003, 3 times this, and we may once again implement. After that, once again, whatever is my learning rate right now is 0.003. Let us multiply it with 3. So approximately it comes out to be 0.01 and so on. And this is how we may proceed. And we may pick the appropriate alpha value. So we need to have a trade-off. Okay, we should reach to the global minima also, and we should make sure that the number of iterations are also marginal, or the number of iterations are also not too much, because it will then take lots of time to converge. No doubt it will converge, but it will take lots of time, right? So these are some practical tricks, those we should follow while implementing our gradient descent. Okay, any doubt? If you have any doubt, please let me know. Yes? Any doubt? Yes?
No, ma'am.
Fine. So if you have understood those practical tips, whether we are having any time remained, not actually. Okay. So in the next session, we'll be focusing upon the polynomial regression and the alternative for gradient descent, that is the normal equation. right? So in the next class, we'll be focusing upon these two concepts, and then we'll proceed to the next algorithm, that is logistic regression.